Good afternoon. Earlier today, I sent out the fiscal year 2018 grant application along with the cover sheet and the instructions for how to complete the grant application. I have up here on my screen the cover sheet for fiscal year 2018, and not a whole lot has changed to this document. You'll see that the application procedures are still the same. You must submit the completed application by January 31st of 2017. You must have the completed grant application document, the approval letters from the county commissioner and the advisory board, and you must have the updated collaboration plan to include all the entities who are requesting funding. So again, those are due by January 31st of 2017, and you must submit the entire completed package to this DOC ComCore at idoc.in.gov email address. If you do have any questions about submitting your grant application, please contact your regional program director with any questions regarding funding amounts or programs. If you have any questions about how to complete the grant, please contact Carrie Porter or myself, Debbie Braun, and you'll see that my information is contained here in the cover sheet. The next document is the actual instructions, so you can use this as you go through the grant application in order to complete it. We tried to keep it as brief as possible, but yet provide enough information to help you through getting the document completed. Okay, on my screen you'll now see the actual grant application for fiscal year 2018. So let's go ahead and start working through it, and hopefully that this tutorial will provide you with a good visual representation of how to complete the document. Alright, so I'm going to say that my county is Blackford County, so I'm going to click on and highlight Blackford County, and then I'm going to begin completing the contact information for my county auditor and the advisory board chair. I've gone ahead and filled in some of the information just to save a little bit of time. But you notice when I clicked out of the box there, and if I scroll down to the bottom of my document, you'll see that the document automatically puts in the county that I have selected. If I'm a regional county and I need to select other counties as part of the region, you'll click on the control button and then click on the other counties as needed. So you see that I've clicked on the Boone, Brown, and Carroll. And then once again, when you scroll down, after I've clicked out of that box, I'll scroll down and then you can see the document has added those additional counties to the document. All right, so for now I'm going to go back and select Blackford County. I've completed all the contact information for the auditor and advisory board chair. Now I'm going to select the eligible entities who are applying for grant funding for fiscal year 2018. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Community Corrections, who I've already put some information in here again to just save some time, and these are fictitious numbers and names, etc. So I'm going to click on Community Corrections. And when I do click on it, you will notice that immediately pops up the section for community corrections. I'm also going to click on probation, and when I do that, it will highlight and bring up the probation information. So, community corrections, I'm going to add in my base funding that is being requested. So at the beginning of fiscal year 2016, my county was awarded $172,000. I'm going to enter that information in there. You don't need to add in any commas, decimal points. The document will automatically do that for you. So 172,000, if I hit enter, it automatically puts it in a currency form. So for fiscal year 2016 and fiscal year 2017, I was awarded some additional funding for my county. So in fiscal year 2016, I was awarded $56,000, and then in 2017, I was awarded $123,000 of 1006 funding for my community corrections. So I'm going to add those two totals together, and that comes up to $179,000 that I received in total for fiscal year 16 and 17 of 1006 funding. It's going to be very important to keep these numbers separate as we go forward with data collection and information gathering to report outcomes. So the boxes for the court recidivism reduction, jail treatment, probation, and prosecutors diversion, those will be locked, and the agencies will not be able to put any base funding requested because everything that they were funded with was from the 1006 funding. So they'll only be able to enter their amounts in here. For probation, since I've clicked on that, I've added in my probation funding that was awarded, and I was awarded a total of $156,000 in fiscal year 16, and then as an example, a one-time award of $15,000 in fiscal year 2017. So my total request for fiscal year 18 is going to be the 156 because the $15,000 was a one-time award. I will not be receiving that again in fiscal year 2018. So my total amount being requested is $156,000. You'll notice that below these boxes, the total amount being requested for the county and all the entities together has come up to $507,000. All right. Moving on through the document, you'll just continue to answer the yes or no questions and then provide any narratives that are being requested. So, for example, does the county collaborate with parole? There's a drop-down menu here that when you click on the arrow, then you can select yes or no. If you select yes, that your county does collaborate with parole, when you select it, you'll notice that the boxes become highlighted in red, and this shows you that it requires you to enter in some more information. So if you click yes, and it highlights, you have to enter that information, and the form does not let you go past that. You have to put that information in. So I'm going to answer what is the total number of parolees estimated to be served during the fiscal year. I put it 15, and then I would put in I would describe my collaboration and the services that are provided to parolees. So if, for example, my agency provides electronic monitoring as a sanction for parolees, I would type that information in here in this box. And please note, too, that these boxes are not limited to what you see on the screen. They will automatically expand as you type in the text. So I've just pulled off some random paragraphs on the internet, and you'll see that as I paste that in there and then I click out of it, you'll notice that the document added in my text and then it automatically expands the box. So no more having to send the grant application in for us to expand it so that when you print it, you'll be able to see the entire thing. It automatically does it for you. We're very excited. All right. So just continue answering the information. And so as you see here, my next section then begins with community corrections, because at the beginning of the document, as you know, I selected that my entities are community corrections and probation. So I'm going to start with community corrections. I've gone ahead and I filled in some of the contact information, again to save some time, and then just entered in fictitious information. Agency contact of my director, and then I answered yes or no to the questions by selecting the appropriate drop down. And then I'm going to continue working through. I'm going to choose the assessments that are utilized by my agency. Again, if I select other, it's going to highlight the red, or it's going to highlight the box below it in red, and then I would have to list all those other assessments that my agency provides. All right. And in this example, I was working on it earlier and just kind of cut and pasted some information in, so you could see again that the boxes will automatically expand as you type it, as you type the information in. All right. Under the contacts and monitoring used by the agency, again here I selected about being drug tested, drug testing for participants. I clicked on yes, so the box is highlighted in red. This requires me to enter in what my policy says regarding alcohol and drug testing. So you will need to put those details in that box there. Under the criminogenic interventions, there's a question here that says number of individuals served in fiscal year 16 who were not in a level of supervision. This is pretty important. We would need these numbers as well, because there are times when the courts will order participants to a certain program, such as Thinking for a Change or MRT, but not necessarily a level of supervision, such as day reporting or work release or home detention. So these individuals don't get counted in a level of supervision, but we want to give the agency credit for still providing them services. So important to note, so if you served 120 in Thinking for a Change or MRT, you would enter in 120 in the box or whatever that number is. All right, levels of supervision within the agency. So in my community correction agency, my agency has work release and electronic monitoring. So if I'm going to unclick it here real quick, because you'll see that I don't have anything clicked, but once I do click it, then the work release section pulls up underneath and you begin entering in your capacity numbers and all for each level of supervision. So it'll be the same for each one. You'll have to answer some capacity numbers for each level of supervision. But I've selected work release and electronic monitoring. I've clicked on both of those. And then I'm just going to go through and answer the questions on the document. So my work release facility is a standalone. This is when my work release level of supervision began, November 2nd of 2015. If you click on the box and you click on the arrow, a calendar will actually pop up and you can choose the date of when it started. If you're not exactly sure of the day, your best guesstimation is fine, so you could put July 1st or January 1. As a start date, January 1, 1985. Target population to be served. This is going to be very important for each level of supervision that you have clicked on. Make sure you fill that in. For my work release, it's going to ask the number of work release beds that are in my community corrections agency, how many for male, how many for female, and then it will automatically total depending on what you put in these two boxes. So you can see that I have 85 beds for males, 15 for females. Average daily population, this is for felons and for misdemeanants, and then also pretrial individuals. So on an average daily population, my work release is to capacity. I have 76 felons, 9 misdemeanants, and 15 of those are pretrial that are serving in my work release facility. All right, then we need to know the number of pretrial individuals served in work release for fiscal year 16. So the number that my work release served was 180. Again, these are all fictitious numbers that I just entered in for the sake of entering in numbers. Anticipated number of individuals to be served with the 1006 funding, and I put in 100. Then you're going to do a breakdown, and this was on the previous year's grant as well. You're going to do a breakdown of your felons and misdemeanors by risk level. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to select my county. Again, if you're in a regional agency, you're going to click on the plus sign to the left of the box. And okay, I've already filled in some information, so ignore that message that just popped up. But if I had Boone County, I would go ahead and select Boone County in here if that was in my region as well. But for now, we're going to go ahead and keep Blackford County as my county. If you've made a mistake and added too many boxes, you can click the minus sign and it will make those boxes or those rows disappear. All right, and then you just begin filling in the information. So for high-risk felons, my agency served 25. For misdemeanors, it served 7. Medium-risk clients, 56. Misdemeanors, we're going to serve 10. And then you'll notice too that the numbers, especially if you have more than one county that you're providing services for or that you have agencies in, it'll automatically add at the bottom here, and then it'll give you a total number in this box here. Oh, and Carrie's in here too, by the way, so she's whispering in my ear. But this total population served, if your number is not coming out right and you're like, hey, why is that all not adding up? It's because my numbers here are also adding in my pretrial number. Okay, so it's adding in as a separate number. It's adding that to the total population served for fiscal year 16. All right, so after I have completed that, now I'm going to begin working on my budget for the work release level of supervision. That automatically, again, it automatically populates in the document. So whatever entity you don't click on, when you go to print it out or when you go to complete it, if you don't click on that entity, you're not going to see the information. So no more wasted pages as before when we would print out the entire document and every page, whether you completed it or not, would print out, so would the budget, etc. So if you don't click on something, it's not going to print the page and it's not going to waste paper. So this is very exciting for us. Okay, work release budget. You can see that I added in Tom Jones, and I think Tom Jones changed his name here in my document, but that's okay. I added Tom Jones in here as my director. He is a full-time, and again, this is a drop-down menu, so you just select full or part-time employee. Percentage of time and level of supervision. Tom is spending 50% of his time, so you will need to enter that in as a decimal. So if you hit 0.5, it'll change it to the 50%. His gross salary is $63,000, and I have two components within my agency or levels of supervision. I have my work release and I have my electronic monitoring. 50% of his time will be spent in work release, 50% of his time will be spent in electronic monitoring. So then what I've done is I've separated or I've divided his salary between the two, coming up with $31,500. So $31,500 will be covered under the base state funds. So this employee is covered under the Community Corrections base funds. And Sonia Smith, who is the case manager, 50% of her time will be spent in work release, but half of her salary, or actually her total salary eventually, once you add in electronic monitoring, will come out of the 1006 funding. So I've added their salaries in there. So you can add as many staff members as you have, or as that you desire, but as many staff members as you have. You just do that by simply clicking the plus button. And again, my document, you'll see that it keeps popping up with this message. That's because I have entered in some information already. And we'll talk about this here in just a minute, but I've entered information in already, and it's basically telling me that I cannot proceed unless I fill in the information being requested. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep adding till I have all my staff added in, and then I'm going to fill in their appropriate amounts depending on, and also to whether it's under base funding or 1006 funding. It's going to automatically calculate the row, and it'll automatically calculate the column and give us a grand total of the staffing numbers, or the staffing amount. All right, fringe series is next. So you'll see here, as you click on the drop-down menu, you'll click on it and you'll see that all the line items are included. So I selected workers' compensation for this one, and then I've added in an amount that's going to be covered by the base state funds. And then if part of it's going to be covered by 1006 funding, then we can cover part of it by 1006 funding. All right, I've chosen FICA, and then if I need to add other line items, I can do that by selecting or clicking on the plus and then adding the line item and then putting in the amounts. Okay, supply series, or series 200, it's the same thing. All the line items are included here. You just click on whichever one that you are needing. So for office supplies, and then I'm going to divide up the amounts as I need to, depending on which funds that they come from. So base funds, we're going to say $500. 1006 funds, it would be $250 for office supplies. All right. Food, then I'm going to add another one here, and you'll see that I have, Carrie's actually put in the miscellaneous supplies. You'll notice that on your other form, and that's why I keep getting the error message that you see have kept popping up, because I entered an amount here. I entered $900, but I did not type anything in the field. So if you enter something as miscellaneous, you have to put what that miscellaneous supply is. So this is the first thing that came to the top of my head. I know that's a lot for tissues, but we're going to use tissues as an example. So I'm spending $900 of base funds on tissues. But now, because I don't have an amount there, I'll be able to go to the next one and I won't get that error message because I have typed in what that miscellaneous supply is. All right, 300 series, again, it's the same. You can select the needed line item, and you can select, you can add, and I've got one more on here. Under professional contracts, it's the same. So if I put $32,000 in, if I put an amount in here, I have to describe what that professional contract is. I will keep getting an error message if I don't put that in there. So the professional contract, we'll say that it's with Midtown Mental Health. All right, and so when I click off of there and go to the next box then, and actually I don't need another one, so I'm just going to, oh, that's the other one's for miscellaneous service, got it. All right, so if I have a miscellaneous service, I can I can choose that one too. I can add more as needed, but if I put an amount in here, I have to describe what exactly that miscellaneous service is. Again, it will automatically calculate per column and per row, and then I'll give you a grand total. Capital series, the same thing. After you complete the budget, the document will automatically add up everything that you have requested. So again, for community corrections, your base state funds cannot exceed the amount that you were awarded at the beginning of fiscal year 16. Those numbers should match because those base state funds at this time are not increasing or decreasing at this time. All right, so as with the previous version of the budget, there's also the narrative sections. It's very important to be very, very descriptive in the narrative sections so that we can have the clearest picture of what your agency is providing as far as programs, treatment, services, and supervision, etc. It must be detailed, very descriptive. So first you're going to describe the level of supervision. So I'm going to provide detailed information in my level of supervision. Again, the boxes will expand depending on how much information that you type in there. So again, using my example text, you can see that it automatically expanded the box. All right, the next one, provide a descriptive justification on how the base funding will be used. So for community corrections, you're going to describe how that base funding will be used to support the current operations for the level of supervision. So you will need to justify the amounts that are being requested from the budget up above. And then the next box, these are for the 1006 funds. So anything being requested in the 1006 funds, if you'll remember from my example above with the case manager, that case manager was being supported, her salary was being supported or funded by the 1006 funds. I'm going to include that justification of what she provides to clients. I'm going to put that justification in that 1006 box, and that's this box here that says provide a descriptive justification on how the requested funds will be utilized for expansion and or new programs. Again, this is for 1006 funding requests. All right. And then now we're going to start with my next level of supervision that I had selected from above. When I selected work release and home detention, remember I got the work release level of supervision information, and then now I'm working on the home detention and electronic monitoring piece. So again, I just start the process over again for home detention and electronic monitoring. So I'll begin filling in the information being requested. You can see right off the bat, there's immediately some highlighted boxes. The information must be filled in. All right, again, the number of felons and misdemeanors by risk level, filling those numbers in. So going back to my example of Blackford County, I'm going to fill that in. Again, if it was a regional, then I'm going to add another line or another another row, and then choose the counties that I need for my region. All right, and then I begin with the electronic monitoring budget, and I fill it in the same way that I did with the work release. So I had my example of Tom Jones, who is the director, and using the drop-down menu, he's a full-time employee. I have two levels of supervision, the work release and electronic monitoring. So 50% as a decimal, 50% of his time will be in this level of supervision. His gross salary, I think, was $63,000. Is that too many zeros, I think? All right, gross salary is $63,000. This staff person is paid from the base funds, so $31,500 is half his salary because he spends half the time in this level of supervision. So there's the breakdown for this individual's gross salary. My case manager, Sonia Smith, she's the case manager for electronic monitoring as well as work release. She's a full-time. She spends 50% of her time in this level of supervision. I think, if I remember correctly, her salary was $43,000, and she is paid out of the 1006 funding. So then I would put her salary in here. All right, and again, just moving on, 100 series, 200 series, 300 series, and 400 series. And that would be, it'll automatically calculate the information that you've put in above, so that's a summary sheet. And then I would fill in my narratives. Again, providing a detailed description of this particular level of supervision, electronic monitoring, home detention, providing a justification on how the base funds will be used to support the operations, and then a justification on how the 1006 funds will be used for expansion or a new program. So, detailed description of the level of supervision, how the base funds will be used is this next box, a descriptive justification of how the base funds will be used, and then a descriptive justification on how the 1006 funds will be used in that third box. And then, because I've only selected the two levels of supervision, electronic monitoring and work release, and I've completed that section, I'm now down to the bottom, and it's automatically going to put together a community corrections budget summary for me. That will also include a per diem for each level of supervision, and then finally a total per diem. So you won't have to calculate that. It'll already be there. All right. On page 1 of my document, if you recall, I selected as an eligible entity who was applying for funding was probation. So also added is the probation section. I've started completing the information for my chief PO. Rebecca, I've added her information in here. County supervising program. So for this county, this is going to be my Blackford County. Now, if I was in a regional agency, I would add another probation program, and it's going to populate within my document another sheet where I can add and click on, I can select Boone, Carroll, Brown County, as in our examples from above. So we will probably, once we get to the bottom there, we'll see another sheet added in for probation, since I did select add another probation program. All right, so I completed the contact information for my chief PO, and now again I'm just going to begin working through the document just like I did with community corrections. Pretty much the information is exactly the same as in for all levels or all entities. Community corrections, probation, court recidivism reduction, and also prosecutors diversion. It might be just a little bit different, but it's asking for basically the same exact information. Assessments, my agency does IRAS assessments, mental health, education. I just click on the appropriate ones. Once I clicked on IRAS, it asked me if that IRAS is conducted on all felony offenders. I'm going to select yes. And then what is the written policy that describes how often your participants are assessed on risk and needs? I would type that information in there. Again, I'm going to use my cut and paste from the computer generated language that I just put in there. And if I tab down to the next box, it will automatically expand to accommodate all the information that I've typed in there. All right, so then again, you just go through and answer the yes or no by using the drop-down menus. If you get a box that's highlighted in red, that means you've entered in an answer that requires additional information. So you have to fill that information in, or you're going to keep getting an error box and it won't let you go any further. All right, level of supervision here. You'll see that for probation, we just have, as of right now, until this changes, for probation, prosecutors diversion, court recidivism reduction, we've kind of put everything under the day reporting. And that day reporting, there's no real definition for that. It's just kind of all-encompassing for those new entities. So if your probation department does have electronic monitoring, you're going to select that. If you have a forensic diversion or if you have problem-solving court, you select those two. But if I'm just doing straight probation supervision, I'm going to select the day reporting. All right, and then I'm going to enter in all the information just like the one we did with community corrections. Target start date or the actual start date of the level of supervision, target population, and then all the statistical information or capacity information. Average daily felon, average daily misdemeanors, so on and so forth.
This is a visual error, but it has no effect on the document.
Okay. All right, and then once I get that information in, then you will see that the budget pops up, and I would begin putting in the budget for my individuals or that I have under the 1006 funding. So if I have hired Frank Sinatra, he's going to be a probation officer, and I have hired him in full-time. He's going to be 100%, oh, nope. See, got to be very careful with the numbers that you put in there. All right, he's going to be 100% in this level of supervision because I've hired, I believe, 3 positions with that salary cap for the probation department. So I'm going to add him in. Now, I'm not going to use, his gross salary, he's at the $32,128. Now, these boxes for probation, court recidivism reduction, and prosecutors diversion are blocked, so you can't enter anything here under the base state funds. You're only going to be able to enter them out here. So for the 1006 funding, he's funded fully at the $32,128 through the grant dollars. And so you'll notice that then it will calculate the correct amount. As I add in my next probation officer, this is Jackie Gleason. Jackie Gleason, the probation officer. He is also full-time, 100% in, and his salary is the $32,128. Again, these are fictitious numbers, so these are just numbers that I'm pulling out just to enter in for the sake of entering numbers into the document. This box under the base state funds will be, they're not open for you to use, but you will put the amount in under the 1006 funding. All right, and then it will automatically calculate those amounts. Then you'll continue to do, enter in the Fringe series, Supply series, the 300 series, and Capital series if need be. Again, you'll use the 1006 column to enter in your amounts. And as a reminder, if you put amount in the if you put an amount in for a miscellaneous supply, it's going to tell me when I hit enter, it gave me the error message, and it's going to tell me that I have to put exactly what that supply is. Again, because I've got tissue stuck in my head, tissues is going to be the miscellaneous supply. All right, and then you can add as many line items as you need for each series. And then you just put the amount here under the 1006 funds. All right, as you complete the budget, again, it will automatically pull up a budget summary for you. It'll add in everything that you've entered into the shaded boxes. And it will auto-calculate each of the rows and then each of the columns and give you a total number. Same for probation. As with community corrections, here's the narrative part to the budget where you're going to put in the detailed information of the level of supervision. So for my probation supervision, I'm going to put in eligibility requirements, participant expectations, what programs I offer, etc. For probation, court recidivism reduction, prosecutor's diversion, you're only going to have to put in a justification for the 1006 funding. So this second box here, or actually this third box here, this box here that says provide a descriptive justification on how the base funding will be used will be left blank, or you can just leave it as is with please enter the justification. You are only going to enter in your descriptive justification in this box here for the 1006 funding. All right, and when I clicked on earlier, just to show you if you're a regional, when I clicked on add another probation program, here's where it populated. It populated at the end of the first one that I had. So I could click on as many as I want. For West Central Regional, you have 5 counties within your region. You could potentially have 5 probation sections, so you can add the number that you want. And then you would just fill out the information for that county. So for example, the one above it was for Blackford County. This one's going to be for Boone County. And then I would fill in all the information. All right, once I complete it, once I complete the document, then at the bottom, the last several pages are going to be a grant application summary sheet. So this would be a good checks and balances for you too. You can look that over and make sure that you've entered in information throughout your document correctly. This will give you a quick glance of the information that you've put in the document. It's also going to be very helpful for us as well when we go to review and to award funding. It's broken down by levels of supervision for each entity that has applied. All right, so that concludes the visual tutorial. Again, if you should have any questions on how to complete the document, please contact Carrie Porter or myself with those questions. We can quickly troubleshoot any of those issues that you might be having. It should be pretty self-explanatory. It's just a lot of pointing and clicking and then typing in a narrative. Again, once you complete the document, please make sure that you follow the instructions for submission by including the updated collaboration plan, the completed application, the approval letters from the county commissioners, and the advisory board. All of that must come in one packet and sent to the DOC ComCore web address that was on the cover sheet. So if you have any questions on how to complete the application, contact Carrie Porter or myself. If you have questions regarding the amounts you were awarded or how to come up with that number, if you have any questions like that or specifically about program questions and how it relates to the grant, please contact your regional program director for assistance on that. Thank you. Hope you have a great day.